Music, makeup, and mains. Music, makeup, and mains. Music, makeup, and mains. It's all about music, makeup, and my mains.
Hey YouTube, it's your girl K Charisma coming at you with another video. Last week when I posted my birth story, there was a question in the comment section as far as what questions I had for my doula and my midwife on the interviewing process. I thought this was super important and it would be very insightful for expecting moms. So here it is. All right, so for my doula, these are some of the questions I did ask in real life and also some questions I wish I would have asked as well. The first question is, well, it's not really a question. I'm kind of telling you to check the chemistry and be real with yourself regarding the chemistry you and your doula have, as well as your doula and your partner or any other birth person or birth support that might be present. If your doula doesn't mesh well with yourself, with your significant other, with your family, it might impact your birth in a not so positive way. You want to feel at ease. You want to feel like you can be yourself. You want a doula that you feel like you can, eventually be naked in front of, because that might be the case. You want somebody that can see you scared, vulnerable, pretty much all those emotions that you don't share with everyday regular people. I'm not saying you have to know your doula, but make sure the vibe is there to where if, you and your doula had to get to know each other, it could work. Also, I would tell you to ask how many births the doula has attended. Not that the amount so much matters, but the different settings like hospital, home, and birth center. Those settings matter simply because if you decide to birth at home or at a birth center, worst case, you might be transferred and you want to make sure that your doula knows how to navigate those terrains because that's important. If the setting changes, you want to make sure the doula is still going to be useful to you. Next, I would ask if the doula is certified. Certification is important. A lot of people, I hear people all the time say, oh, my cousin's gonna be my doula or my auntie's gonna be my doula. And that's cool that, that person's willing and able to step in place for you during your birthing process, but it doesn't mean that they're equipped with all the knowledge that a doula is equipped with. Certification is important and experience is important. For example, the doula that attended my birth, she was DONA certified. And DONA's like a super huge doula organization. They've been around for a little minute, so they're reputable. That's important because the core values DONA has, the different training methods they have, all of those will show up in your birth and can affect it negatively or positively. So definitely ask about certification. I would also ask about testimonials or reviews from other parents. If your doula has anywhere that you can read on those reviews or testimonials, you'll be able to see how your doula was helpful to other families in certain regards and capacities. If she was competent culturally with someone that maybe shares your culture or ethnicity in common, those little things add up. If your doula isn't culturally competent, if they didn't do well with a family that might be kind of like your family, you might see that it can pose an issue for you. So kind of to avoid that, read those reviews if they got them. Also, let's see what else. Ask if your doula has a backup. In the event that your doula can't attend your birth, definitely ask if she has a backup doula. Ask if there's the possibility for you to meet and establish some kind of relationship with that backup doula, just in case your doula is like double booked, another labor comes about the same day and time as your labor. Anything can happen. Just make sure that you're covered and in that fee that is covered because you could only do this once. I mean, you can do it again, but this specific birth, you can only do that once. So you want to make it count. Ask how many times you would see the doula before and after your birth. My doula showed up maybe 2 or 3 times prior to my birth, and I saw her once or twice after my birth as well. I believe I saw her once. She did come in the postpartum period. She made sure to help me with the latching for breastfeeding. She was breastfeeding support education for me. Prior to the birth, we kind of linked up to do the birth plan. She let me know interventions that I can accept, reject, the risks, benefits, the whole 9. And then she came another day prior to me giving birth to show me comfort measures and to show my partner comfort measures, different ways that my partner and my family could be incorporated into my birth. She was pretty much training them. So I found that really helpful, and I think it's helpful to see your doula more than just on the date of your birth. ask if they have a cutoff time based on the length of labor. So my labor was about, I don't know, my labor was maybe 11 hours total, 11 hours and a half or so. I would ask the doula how long she would be there before she has a cutoff. Some doulas have a 24-hour cutoff. So if they've been with you for 24 hours, it's a wrap. If you haven't given birth, if they showed up too early, like, it's kind of done for. And a lot of them are, you know, empathetic, and they can be helpful in staying longer or like going to take a break, seeing their family and coming back. But you want to make sure that you have continuous support covered, whether or not your doula can be there. I would also tell you to ask your doula what kind of birth plans they do. Some doulas offer electronic birth plans, and I kind of find this to be like homework, because the moms have to research the risk, benefit, make those decisions kind of on their own, versus if the doula works on the birth plan with you. All right, so we have a guest, but it's cool. This is what it's all about. Baby, let mama work. He just woke up, y'all. But we're almost done with the doula questions. Then I would ask how the doula would incorporate your partner or other birth support. Again, this goes back to how many times you'll see your doula and whatever training she provides for comfort measures. And lastly, how soon after labor starts can I expect you? My doula told me she would take about an hour to get to me after labor started, and that was, you know, told to me in the interview, and she kept true to that. Usually an hour standard time, 2 hours is probably the max I've seen. You okay? All right. What comfort measures can you provide, or what support can you provide? So the comfort measures, like we mentioned, you are going to have support people there, hopefully. So you want to make sure that your doula uses them for comfort measures, and you also maybe want to test out the comfort measures that your doula is comfortable with before you're actually in labor, because you might find out that things you practice don't work for you in labor. It might actually make you uncomfortable. So it's a good idea to practice, see what feels good, and then during the actual labor, you can decide if it's still working for you or if you need modification. That's pretty much everything I would tell you to ask your doula. As far as midwives, it all depends if your midwife is a hospital midwife or a birth center / home birth midwife. That is going to make a difference in what is provided. I remember since I did have my son at a birthing center, there were no ultrasounds at all. Like after I switched to the birth center, I didn't see him on an ultrasound again. So if ultrasounds are something that you look into or that you want, be sure that you can get that outside. What would you ask your midwife? You would ask if they offer water births, simply because a water birth, it helps with pain relief. Water is a natural pain reliever, and it doesn't take the pain away completely, but it does relieve the pain. So if you can incorporate water in your natural birthing process, that might be a good idea to ask your midwife if it's something she provides. I would also ask if the midwife is okay with delayed cord clamping or a lotus birth. Different midwives are familiar with lotus birthing, not cutting the cord at all, and others are okay with delayed cord clamping. That was important to me, and that's what made me switch providers completely. So make sure you ask if delayed cord clamping is an option. I would also ask what golden hour looks like. Golden hour is the first hour after birth. Ask your midwife if they're doing any examinations, newborn exams on the baby, if anything additional is going on during that time period, or if you have uninterrupted time with your newborn and, breastfeeding, bonding, skin to skin, the whole nine. You want to know what's going to take place that hour so you know how to prepare yourself. Also, would you allow me to move about in labor? Typically, birth centers and home births, you're not really restricted. Hospital births, I believe for the most part, as long as you're not receiving an IV or have continuous fetal monitoring, you are able to move about during labor. It is better to move about during labor because it kind of helps gravity work with you and the baby in the birthing process. So just find out if you can move about during your labor. Do you have a backup? So when I had my son at the birth center, I was seeing 2 midwives, and I was, under the understanding that if one wasn't available, I would see the other one. Now, I was seeing them alternatively, so one week I would see one, the other I would see, the other, or like every other appointment, my midwife would change. That way you establish a relationship with both. I also got to interview with the non-emergency, doctor or provider that I would see if I had to be transferred to a hospital. And obviously, if it's an emergency, I don't know what provider I would see, but that's, different. So just make sure that your midwife has a backup, and anyone else that might be involved in a non-emergency situation, that you do have a relationship established with them, and that there's mutual respect regarding your birth plan. What happens if you go past your due date? So induction is something that my midwife and my birth center wasn't really down for. So I was good in that sense. I was 2 days, late on my due date, but it worked out in our favor because the baby still arrived. You want to know if your midwife, would consider Pitocin or anything else, if they have natural induction methods. You want to ask those questions beforehand. That way you know if it's something that works for you. All right. What happens in the case of transfer? Again, hopefully, you won't be transferred anywhere else, but in the event that you are transferred, you want to make sure you have a relationship with that provider. You want to know what facility you might be going to if you're not birthing in a hospital. Those are important questions to ask beforehand. When will I see you postpartum? So because I birthed at a birth center, my midwife showed up, I believe, 24 hours after I gave birth. I took the baby home 3 hours after, he was born. And then the midwife showed up a day later, and then 2 days after that. So she did 2 in-home visits, and then I saw her at about, I think, 2 weeks postpartum after that. Or maybe it was longer, 6 weeks. Either way, she did come to the house 2 times. So you want to make sure that you have your postpartum visits, set, or know roughly when and how you're going to go about seeing your midwife. I would also ask how often the midwife performs episiotomies. Episiotomies are pretty much the cut of vaginal tissue versus letting it just tear on its own, during labor if it happens naturally. That was important to me because I did not want an episiotomy. If it's something that you don't want, make sure you ask and make sure it's not routine practice for that midwife. Also ask if you can opt out of routine interventions. So routine interventions mean continuous fetal monitoring. If you're in a hospital setting and fetal monitoring is required, ask if they have wireless fetal monitoring, and ask if it's waterproof. Because again, if you are going to use the water as a pain relief method, you want to make sure that you can use that equipment in the water and it won't get damaged. Again, that's going to affect your motility. If you have the fetal monitoring continuously, you're not going to really be able to move about during labor like you want to, and that might compromise some of the ways that you can help the baby descend. You're also going to want to take into account anything additional you do, any routine interventions like Pitocin, epidural. You're going to want to ask the risk and the benefit of all of those things and ask how that's going to affect your labor. In some cases, it does help some moms progress, and others, it doesn't really do anything. So you want to make sure you know the risk and the benefit before you are in that situation under pressure and have to make a rash decision. Another thing that I would kind of like make sure to ask or tell your midwife that anything that she does, anytime she touches you, you want consent. Like that should be a given, but you want to be able to consent to anything that's done to you. For example, I know towards the end, sometimes in vaginal checks, they'll do a membrane sweep. For whatever reason they do it, a membrane sweep is sometimes done and the mom is not aware. Other times they will do the artificial rupture of membranes where they break your water for you. If that's not something you want, that's not something you consent to, make sure you let your midwife know in advance that you're not okay with that. And she's completely violating if she doesn't when you say, you're not okay with that. So I'm super huge on consent, and I believe that the midwife and any health provider should ask for consent beforehand. But in whatever case, if they don't, just let them know ahead of time, like this is part of your birth plan. So anyways, that's pretty much all the questions I would have for a doula and a midwife. Lennox is up, so I have to take care of him, y'all. But thank you so much for watching. If you have any additional questions regarding birthing, regarding interviewing, like whatever, just ask and I'll be more than happy to answer those questions for you. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate y'all and stay tuned.